We have been conditioned to believe that capturing the power of the sun demands expensive silicon panels, complicated electronics, and fragile systems that eventually fail. These setups feel like sealed black boxes, something you cannot truly understand, repair, or rebuild when time takes its toll. But this belief hides a much simpler and far older truth. There exists a method of harvesting solar energy that has been known for centuries, a method built not on complex chemistry, but on the basic laws of heat and motion, using materials that can be found almost anywhere. While modern rooftop panels struggle to convert a small portion of sunlight into usable energy, this older approach achieves far greater efficiency, reaching levels close to 70%. It does this not with rare materials or advanced factories, but with simple components like mirrors, glass, and water. This raises an obvious question. What exactly is this forgotten system? How does it work, and why has it not become the standard in every home? To understand this, we need to step back to a time before centralized electricity dominated the world. In the 19th century, long before modern solar panels existed, a French mathematician named Augustin Mouchot demonstrated a powerful idea. He used a large curved mirror to concentrate sunlight onto a boiler covered in glass. The heat generated was strong enough to produce steam and run a mechanical engine. At a time when nations feared dependence on coal, this invention showed that sunlight could be transformed into a reliable industrial force. Mouchot later presented his invention at a world exhibition, where it amazed audiences by producing ice using heat-driven refrigeration. This was proof that solar energy was not just a weak diffuse source, but something that could be focused and controlled for serious applications. The idea continued to evolve and eventually reached Egypt, where an engineer named Frank Schumann built one of the first large-scale solar thermal power systems. Instead of relying on chemistry, he focused on geometry using long curved mirrors known as parabolic troughs. These mirrors tracked the sun and directed its rays onto a central pipe heating water to produce steam. The steam powered an engine that pumped massive amounts of water, proving that solar energy could operate at industrial scale. Schumann understood something critical that many people overlook today. He realized that fossil fuels were limited and that the sun offered a constant and abundant alternative. His vision was ambitious, imagining deserts transformed into energy, hubs capable of powering entire regions. However, global events and the rise of cheap oil shifted attention away from his work. The reason this thermal method can outperform modern solar panels comes down to a fundamental difference in how energy is captured. Photovoltaic panels rely on a chemical process where light particles interact with a material to produce electricity. This process is limited by physical laws, meaning much of the incoming energy is lost as heat. In contrast, the thermal method embraces heat instead of fighting it. By concentrating sunlight into a single point or line, it multiplies the intensity of that energy. Rather than converting light into electricity directly, it captures the heat itself, which is far more efficient for many real-world applications. The key to this process is the shape of the mirror. A flat surface simply reflects light in one direction, but a curved surface redirects all incoming rays toward a single focal point. This creates a concentrated beam of energy far stronger than the original sunlight. When a pipe filled with water or oil is placed at this focal point, it absorbs the heat rapidly. To prevent energy loss, the pipe is often enclosed within a glass tube, creating an insulating effect. This allows temperatures to rise dramatically, often reaching levels high enough to turn water into pressurized steam. At this stage, the system becomes more than a collector. It becomes a power source, capable of driving engines, turbines, or other mechanical systems. One of the biggest advantages of this approach is how it handles energy storage. Unlike electricity, which requires expensive batteries, heat can be stored easily and cheaply. By transferring the collected heat into materials like water, sand, or molten salts, it can be retained for long periods. This stored energy can then be used later, even when the sun is no longer shining. This makes the system highly practical for everyday use. A household could collect heat during the day, store it, and then use it at night for cooking, heating, or powering mechanical devices. The simplicity of the system also makes it easy to maintain. If something breaks, it can be repaired with basic tools rather than replaced entirely. This approach transforms solar energy from a consumer product into a durable piece of infrastructure. Instead of relying on complex electronics, it uses physical processes that are easy to understand and control. This gives individuals greater independence, reducing reliance on centralized power systems. In recent years, this concept has begun to reappear in modern research, particularly in smaller-scale systems designed for homes. These systems focus on capturing heat directly rather than converting it into electricity immediately. This shift highlights the efficiency advantage of thermal methods, especially when combined with simple storage solutions. The numbers support this transition. While traditional panels convert a small fraction of sunlight, thermal collectors can capture a much larger portion. This difference becomes even more significant when considering storage where heat-based systems outperform chemical batteries in both cost and durability. For homeowners, this means a potential shift in how energy is produced and used. Instead of relying entirely on electricity, heat becomes a primary resource capable of handling many daily needs more efficiently. This opens the door to a more resilient and self-sufficient way of living where energy is harvested, stored, and used locally. The real beauty of this system lies in its simplicity. It does not require rare materials or advanced manufacturing. It relies on principles that have been understood for centuries, yet remain powerful enough to compete with modern technology. By focusing on concentration rather than conversion, it unlocks a level of efficiency that is often overlooked in today's energy landscape. This rediscovered approach challenges the idea that progress always means complexity. Sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that have been quietly waiting in the background, built on the unchanging laws of physics and ready to be used again. What if the most powerful solar technology was never lost, but quietly pushed aside because it made people too independent? The real question is not whether this system works, but why it was never allowed to become mainstream. If the efficiency is higher, the materials are cheaper, and the design is simpler, then something else must explain its disappearance. The answer lies in how energy systems are controlled and monetized. As the 20th century unfolded, the global energy landscape shifted dramatically. Massive oil reserves were discovered, providing a dense, portable, and easily tradable source of power. Unlike sunlight, oil could be extracted, sold, transported, and taxed. It created an entire economic structure built on continuous consumption and centralized control. Solar thermal systems, on the other hand, operate very differently. Once installed, they require minimal ongoing cost. They do not depend on constant fuel purchases, and they do not need complex supply chains. This makes them extremely difficult to turn into a recurring revenue model. For industries built around monthly billing and long-term dependency, this kind of independence becomes a problem. Photovoltaic technology fit the industrial model much better. It requires advanced manufacturing, rare materials, and a global network of production facilities. It also produces electricity in a form that still depends on additional systems like inverters and grid connections. This keeps users tied to the existing infrastructure, allowing energy companies to remain involved. Meanwhile, high-efficiency thermal systems remained mostly out of sight, especially at the domestic level. Even though they could deliver far more usable energy for heating, cooling, and mechanical work, they did not align with the centralized structure that had already taken hold. For a modern homeowner, this creates an interesting opportunity. By stepping away from the all-electric mindset and embracing direct heat capture, it becomes possible to reduce dependence on the grid significantly. Instead of converting sunlight into electricity and then back into heat, the system uses the heat, directly eliminating unnecessary losses. This shift may seem simple, but its impact is profound. Heat is the foundation of many daily activities, from cooking and cleaning to space heating and water supply. By owning the source of that heat, a household gains a level of control that is rarely possible with conventional systems. The transition begins with understanding one critical concept: concentration ratio. This defines how much sunlight is being focused onto a smaller surface area. A higher ratio means greater intensity and higher temperatures. In a typical setup, a wide reflective surface concentrates sunlight onto a narrow pipe, dramatically increasing the energy density. This is what separates a basic solar heater from a true parabolic trough system. It is not just about collecting sunlight, but about compressing it into a powerful stream of thermal energy capable of performing serious work. Building such a system does not require advanced technology. The core components are surprisingly accessible. A reflective surface such as polished metal or specialized film is shaped into a precise curve. This curve ensures that incoming sunlight is directed toward a single focal line where the receiver pipe is placed. Inside this pipe, a fluid carries the absorbed heat away from the focal point. Depending on the design, this fluid can be water, oil, or another heat transfer medium. As it circulates, it transports energy to a storage unit where it can be retained for later use. One of the biggest challenges in this setup is tracking the sun. Because the position of the sun changes throughout the day, the system must adjust to maintain focus. Industrial systems use automated tracking, but simpler solutions are available for smaller installations. Mechanical or sensor-based systems can keep the mirror aligned without significant complexity. Alternatively, the system can be designed to require minimal adjustment by aligning it in a way that follows seasonal changes rather than daily movement. This reduces efficiency slightly, but simplifies operation, making it more practical for everyday use. However, the most important part of the entire system is not the collector, but the storage. Without effective storage, even the most efficient collector cannot provide consistent energy. This is where thermal systems truly stand out. Instead of relying on chemical batteries that degrade over time, heat can be stored in materials that remain stable for years. Water tanks, sand beds, or phase change materials can hold large amounts of energy with minimal loss when properly insulated. These systems retain heat for extended periods, allowing energy collected during the day to be used at night or during cloudy conditions. This ability to store energy efficiently changes the entire equation. It removes one of the biggest limitations associated with renewable energy and provides a reliable source of power that is not dependent on constant sunlight. The economic advantages are equally significant. Because the materials are inexpensive and widely available, the initial cost is much lower than most modern solar installations. The absence of complex electronics further reduces maintenance costs, creating a system that is both affordable and durable. Over time, this leads to a much faster return on investment. Instead of waiting many years to recover costs, the system begins to pay for itself within a relatively short period. This makes it an attractive option for those seeking long-term sustainability. Beyond cost and efficiency, there is a deeper implication. This technology represents a shift in mindset. It moves energy production from centralized systems to individual control. It replaces dependence with self-reliance and transforms energy from a commodity into a resource that can be directly accessed. For communities, this opens the door to decentralized networks where energy is produced locally and shared rather than distributed from a distant source. It reduces vulnerability to supply disruptions and creates a more resilient infrastructure overall. The idea is not to reject modern technology, but to rethink how it is applied. By combining traditional thermal principles with modern materials and design techniques, it becomes possible to create systems that are both efficient and practical. This is why the parabolic trough is often described as a bridge between past and future. It takes the mechanical understanding of earlier generations and applies it to current energy challenges in a way that is both innovative and grounded. In a world increasingly focused on sustainability, the rediscovery of such methods offers a valuable perspective. It shows that progress does not always mean inventing something entirely new. Sometimes it means revisiting ideas that were ahead of their time and adapting them to modern needs. The power of this approach lies in its simplicity and universality. It does not depend on rare resources or specialized knowledge. It can be built, maintained, and improved by individuals using tools and materials that are widely available. This creates a form of energy independence that is not just theoretical but practical. It allows people to take control of their own power supply, reducing reliance on systems that may not always be stable or accessible. Ultimately, the question is no longer whether this technology works. The real question is whether we are ready to use it. By choosing concentration over conversion and heat over complexity, we step into a different relationship with energy, one that is more direct, more efficient, and far more empowering.